All right. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Power Lunch. Thanks for everyone joining us. Today we have a very interesting and unique Power Lunch episode with Mr. Dave Sobel. Dave is a nationally recognized, what would you say? I wouldn't say radio talent anymore. I'd say podcasting and
loudmouth, general loudmouth, opinionated guy who records it.
Wow, I was gonna say new media, but okay.
I love it because this is one of those questions where it's like, how do you describe your job to your parents? Well, I'm a podcaster, YouTuber, Dad.
Yeah, right. It's kind of one of those deals where you start and you can see everybody's eyes kind of start to glaze over. They're looking at their Apple Watch and stuff.
So if anybody anybody who knows me from a career perspective, I was an MSP for about a decade. And then I went and worked for vendors, and the whole step of my career was like, how can I make a difference to help people with technology? It was used to be end users, that I wanted to help MSPs. And what I wanted to do now was be disruptive in media. That was really the way I thought about it. And I always draw this quick triangle. I say that if you think about IT services, there's a triangle of people that cover this space. One is big media, business tech, CNBC, Wall Street Journal, like those guys. Mm-hmm. They are allergic to IT services, right? Love consumer tech, unicorn, stuff, like allergic to IT services. Then I draw another version of that for protocol, CNET, The Verge, like things we all read, right? They love gadgets and they love end customers and I love Silicon Valley, and man, they're allergic to IT services. Right. And then I go to the people that are supposedly covering IT services, and I just look at the space and I go, wow, it feels like the audience is like to be just sold to, not really respected or honored as like my job is to deliver information. It's more like, no, I'm here to sell you things as a pay to play market. And I said, well, I could complain about that, or I could do something about it. So I launched the Business of Tech podcast, and I launched the YouTube shows, and now I'm building it out, and it's a network of shows to help small creators with the reach.
Well, maybe Dave, you could start a little bit with a kind of description of your different media channels. I guess we'll go with just kind of tell people about it, because some people are familiar, but some people aren't. And since you and I first met and had our first conversation a while ago, I've been tuning in and kind of catching up and looking at things, and there's some good content there. And I think one of the things, surprisingly, there's some, I was
surprisingly, you don't suck at your job, Dave. Good job.
After our first conversation, I was shocked at how good it was, though.
Well, thank you. And I mean to be self-aware. It's just, I'm working on it. So my flagship product is the Business of Tech podcast. And it is a daily, roughly 5-minute newscast, and it's news and commentary. I deliver news stories, and I do a segment called Why Do We Care for everyone, to give my perspective on why I selected the story, or what I think is important, or what I'm taking out of it, just because I have an opinion and I don't mind sharing it, but I think there's an important to say, this is the story, and then here's my opinion. And that comes out every single day on your favorite podcatcher. It's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you name Alexa, you name the platform, it's on there. If you prefer a video version, on Fridays, I roll all the stories up to a weekly show called This Week in the Business of Tech on YouTube. That is youtube.com/MSP radio. And then on both channels, I do bonus episodes where I sometimes do editorials, or I do, opinion pieces or interviews where I just want to dive more into the bits. And that's the primary stuff. I also do a weekly show called Killing It. I do it with Carl Palachuk and Ryan Morris. And if Business of Tech is Sports Center, Killing It is, pardon the interruption, where it's talking heads, and we do kind of bigger picture debate over stories and what we think of, where we think larger trends are going, and we do that. And then across MSP radio, there's a couple of different properties that I'm involved with where I don't produce the content. So Carl Palachuk does his SMB community podcast. Todd Kane does his Evolved radio podcast. And I've got a couple ones about to announce that are joining the network. So it's independent creators that we help one another grow. And I always think it's important to understand, how do people make money? I sell ads. I don't mind saying I sell ads. That's how I pay for all of this. That's how I keep myself fed and clothed, is I sell ads, because when I talk to solution providers, most of the time, and MSPs and IT guys, most of the time you're inundated by vendors, right? And they all want you to show up to some webinar that's an hour long, where it's really just a commercial embedded in a bunch of garbage. Right. What if you could just hear the commercial? What if you could just hear the 30-second pitch? You want to hear from you want to hear the new solutions. You just don't want them spamming your inbox or wasting your time. Right. But you'll give them 30 seconds to listen to an ad. So I put an ad in my show.
Right. It's interesting listening to you articulate that. I mean, and part of, what we try to do with PowerLunch is, I mean, we're a MSP, we're a vendor, but the thrust of the PowerLunch is to try to expose people who I call the friends of NetVPro to new thoughts, new technology, disruptive things, stuff that's going on out there that they might not encounter in their everyday life. So the way you describe those things that you're doing is similar from a philosophical perspective to what we're trying to provide a value. And even though from time to time we have a few people here watching, but the number of people who observe and come back to the show later is great. So it's the content is very interesting, and I think I like to think helpful for folks, giving them at least a sniff of what's going
certainly
on.
And certainly the goal. So and happy to be chatting with you today. So but that's what I'm up to now, and it's is I think I can do the kind of the most help and the most value is I'm generally reasonably good at reading the tea leaves. I'm not perfect, but I watch trends, I watch bits, and I have experience both running an IT services company, but also running vendor orgs and how they all work together. So that's why I try and offer some perspective.
Right. No, that's awesome. And so in that vein, I we'll kind of have a little bit of a bent towards probably security this time around, and we can definitely venture into other places, but by far security and security related questions are what I hear a lot of. So and I guess just to kind of start off the content part of things is I'm wondering what you see as kind of like the biggest current threat, on the security or landscape, like right now. What's the biggest current thing that you hear going on out there when you look at the tea leaves?
So the answer is it's really hard. So I always say I'm a very reluctant security commentator.
Right.
I did this in my 2022 prediction series. Like, I actually really hate talking about security.
Right.
Because
I didn't feel like a trap sometimes.
Well, I didn't get into technology because I wanted to protect people from criminals. I got into technology because I think it's cool, and I think we can do cool stuff with it, and we can grow businesses and make more money and communicate better, and bad guys on the internet have gotten way smart, and they've decided that they're going to make money by being essentially a tax on the business.
Right.
I don't like this space. I don't want to go to customers. I don't want to ask for their money to sell them security stuff, because it doesn't make their lives better. It just makes sure it doesn't get worse. So I want to admit I don't like this space. But I also, live in the real world. and so I know we've got to have actual conversations about it. So if you ask me, the number one thing about this is I actually think that we're not generally treating this like the thing that it is. I always like to say, if you took cyber security and you made it all physical, we'd be having a very different conversation. Gangs of criminals would be roving the streets, breaking into businesses left and right using weapons, because we can agree that ransomware is a weapon, right? Imagine that world. Imagine that physical world where all of these incidents were now happening.
It's the zombie apocalypse.
It's worse than so bad, right?
Right?
It's horrific. It would be the only thing we would be talking about besides maybe coronavirus, right? It'd be literally because it's just two threats of massive scale. But that's not the conversation we're having. And by the way, the opposing side, the criminals, are not like they're not disorganized. They are impressively run business organizations. They are really good at what they do.
I think that's a common theme that I see is people thinking about the threat as though it was a teenage kid in his basement drinking Mountain Dew, eating Cheetos.
Right.
And the cognition that it's just not that anymore isn't there.
It's way more like The Sopranos than it,
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And by the way, like, if Tony Soprano worked in a glass office building, and ran, Goldman Sachs, like, I mean, it was that level of sophistication,
right.
And we don't talk about it that way. We just don't. And we don't think about it that way. And by the way, our customers don't think about it that way, collectively. The end customer doesn't think about it that way. So you asked me where I start. I always start with I want to talk about these things differently. When anybody asks me, how do you talk security? I always say, I actually think you should put security into the competitor bucket when you talk to customers. We all do SWOT analysis, and we talk about our, about who our competition is. Cyber criminals are our end customers' competition, because they are there to steal your profits.
Right. Right.
And when you think about the competitive landscape, Mr. Customer, the cyber mafia needs to be one of the competitors you think about, because they're just out to steal your money. And if you don't make some moves against that competitor, they will steal your money. Not if, they will. It will happen. It is just a matter of time.
That's actually an awesome way to think about it.
And so reframe the problem, right? Because we oftentimes we have all these discussions about their business and the whole bit, and then we go, oh, and by the way, we have to talk about security. Right. Is this afterthought?
I would agree with you. The thing that I dislike about the security discussion is that it's grounded in fear, right? And it kind of has a negative spin to it. It's not talking about necessarily cool tech and this cool thing that can help your business in a positive way. It's started with a sense of fear and foreboding doom, right? And it's just kind of not a happy, fun way to talk about tech,
Right. And that's what I said. I'm reluctant because this, it sucks, right? It's unpleasant. I don't want to talk about this stuff. But if I think about it in a competitive perspective, because I also know that I don't have endless resources, right? I can't deal with every competitive threat equally, and I can't put all my money against security in the security bucket, because then I don't make any money. I don't have any money to run the business, right? And it isn't a money generating effort. It is at best a money protection effort.
Right.
But I got to keep my competitors from stealing my money. So so it's just one of the buckets I have to put my resources into. And if I think about them competitively, I think it helps the framing.
When we think about that, and we think about reframing the whole security discussion, do you see government entities or kind of government getting more involved in the security space? I mean, are they starting to think about it as more of a larger threat than maybe they have in the past? What do you see going on with that?
Distinctly. Look, I will sort of, you got to have this government conversation with some openness around, ideas. I don't look at regulation as a holistically bad thing. And let me start with, and I get teased on killing it all the time because I use this example all the time, but if you and I went into the chemical processing business and we built ourselves a chemical processing plant, the cheapest way to dispose of our waste is to dump it in the river, right? Super cheap, right? Yeah. But society...
What wasn't that at one time called Lake Erie?
Yeah, exactly. Right?
The water that was on fire.
Yeah, in the DC area where I live, it's the Anacostia River, right? Which smelled bad. It literally smelled bad. But we as society have decided that clean drinking water is something we'd like to have. So we put guardrails and say, chemical company, you cannot dispose of your waste by simply dumping it in the river. there is a healthy debate to be had about what does cleanliness mean? How is this to be disposed? What are the impacts? That's regulation and that's politics. But to just say, oh, all regulation is bad, you're essentially saying, well, I don't want clean water. Right. I don't want clean air. And so I look at this and I say, okay, the government right now has recognized that we actually have a national security threat by the level of impact that's going on. Just, I don't know, look at Colonial Pipeline, look at SolarWinds, look at Kaseya, look at, and those are just, I don't know, the three that I pulled off the top of my head, right? Because they're all ones we know. But that's an actual threat to the economy, to the way that we operate, that needs to be addressed. And there is a minimum bar that we need to talk about that is my equivalent of dumping chemicals into the water that we need to talk about. And one of the things may be an idea like maybe we don't allow people to pay ransoms, right? If we squeeze off their money, that actually ends up making the business less profitable, right? And if we start looking at regulation around financial transactions about that to make penalties, maybe that's one of the ways we do that. Again, healthy debate around the politics of it. And I'm not trying to be political. What I'm just observing is we have to have those conversations to figure out the incentives and the structures. Right. Your question was, do I think government's waking up? The answer is, oh, yes. Because by the way, last time I checked, I will go forth and protect small businesses is a winning platform for anybody. Right, regardless of your political affiliation, it is really easy for governments to go, yes, I'm going to protect our economy.
Right. It's interesting to me to see the kind of soup to nuts type of response I get from customers, because there's those who think it's all snake oil. And then there's those who are like hyper afraid of everything, and it just,
and welcome to, we see this in lots of things, right? That's normal. And I'm careful to observe that, like, look, there is not one solution to this.
Sometimes there's value in providing a framework. Like, as an example, somebody who's in my life, I know has to work around mask mandates. And I don't want to get into mask mandates themselves, but the challenge is that no matter which direction that person goes, half the people are mad at that person, right?
Right.
And to listen to what people say, you're destroying their lives, half the people's lives. And it's kind of interesting. And when an organization comes out with a directive, it at least allows the business to say, hey, you know what, we're following this structure, and this structure calls for this.
Exactly. Exactly. And I will observe, if you do not want to function within that structure, you can build your own structure. Like that is how competitive markets work. Because I'm with you on this, and I actually do think that some level of structure is a good thing, right? I want to have certain guardrails, again, because I like to protect people. I think about regulation and stuff is about protecting people, and then I make sure that within those bounds, the businesses can fight it all out and go full hog and let that happen. But let's protect people from the extreme stuff. So when I look at this, I say, look, we can all generally nod and go, we're all aware of the incredible drain that this space is having. We're going to need to have some collective agreement on the way that we're going to deal with those external factors. Let's figure that out. And I think government's waking up to that. You can already sort of see, like, if I look at the timeline, and this is all stuff that I've been reporting on the show, we go from last summer's executive orders around cybersecurity. You can already see that flowing into some of the money that's coming out from the infrastructure bills that's being put directly into projects. That's now being opened up for state and local government and education to be able to get access to that. That's resulting in new guidance. NIST, I'm literally was writing the story before we hopped on. NIST has just released some new guidance for software engineers about the way they should be building code. You can start seeing that all flow into all of the various pieces that we can collectively use to start combating problem.
That's a good point. And, we don't necessarily need to unwrap all of that, but the way applications are developed and the security around that is definitely something that needs to be, is an important thing. It can't be ignored.
We need to have a conversation. Again, think if we put it back to my analogy on the chemical plant, like we just need to have some discussions about the way this stuff all works. And we're kind of proving to ourselves that, well, anything goes, probably not a great idea. Probably not a great idea. Healthy debate to be had. There are trade-offs. There is not a single answer. But we're gonna but you always look and say if a compromise is when nobody's happy, right? So maybe we figured out.
So all that said, is there a particular technology or type of technology in that space that's exciting and interesting to you?
Well, so the answer is zero trust is very interesting to me. I always, and I try and translate this into something very relatable for people the way I think about it. Look, I come from an IT background from the late 90s, early 2000s, right? When I launched my MSP in 2002, the biggest thing you were worried about was somebody deleting a piece of data and you not being able to get it back. Right? Like I worried more about like RAID failure or Janice in accounting deleting things by accident than anything else, right? Now you worry about these threats that are just these theoretical, like, oh my God, I could lose everything. I could lose everything.
The wolf at the door.
Right. But what also is different is if I think about back the way we thought about network design and infrastructure management in the early aughts was we will protect everything. We'll address all endpoints. We'll look at every entry, exit point. We'll manage everything, insight into everything. Oh, and by the way, I could understand everything as a network engineer, systems engineer, consultant working on that. In 2022, it is impossible for you to know and understand everything going on within the technology environment. It is just too complex. Do you understand all of the bits of Azure and AWS and every little bit of transit communication and every single entry point of every single app and every single SaaS cloud? Like it is just too much. And it is a complex system versus just, complicated as before. And we can't take the idea of I will manage and protect everything is not viable anymore. So you have to actually take your time and switch from everything to, zero trust, right? I will trust nothing. I will focus my time and energy on only allowing the right people to have the right access at the right time.
Right.
And note it's 3 dimensions, right? It's right people, place, and time. Because I know that once, when I install something on moment time plus 1, it has changed.
Right.
And so you've really got to change your way of thinking. I spent a lot of time thinking about the way that I can protect the crown jewels of my business versus can I protect every little possible entry point?
Right.
My little baby business, right? I'm a media company. I worry a lot about is all my intellectual property protected, backed up multiple places, minimal access, only the right people. And I don't spend nearly as much time worrying about my desktop, right?
Right.
I just don't. I just want, if something happens to my desktop, that would be painful, but that's not the core to the business, right? I want to make sure my data doesn't leak. And I want to even protect against myself, right? I don't trust me. I want to make sure my stuff I can't screw it up myself. So I believe in all that investment. So it's a different mind shift, and it's a very, very different way of approaching the problem. But I think it's much more effective.
And it's kind of, it's like a framework or a methodology versus a product, right? It's kind of a different approach where in the past, we used to think like this group of people or this thing is trusted, this area is trusted, so they can just do what they want. Or now it's access role-based, logging it, and you're identifying who is touching that information, right? You don't just say this is trusted, and it becomes that individual, and then on the back end, all that access becomes a traceable event. So you see who's doing it.
Right. So we can see what's going on. We've got visibility into that. We can respond to pieces, and we've limited it as much as we possibly can to reduce our risk. Because again, you're 100% right. We're not buying any single product that solves this. In fact, at some level, too much product will make the problem worse.
Right.
I laugh. I was talking to one provider who had like 42 products in their security stack. And
that's too much.
Well, I all I could think was, oh, they can't possibly be all configured right. Like they just can't. Like it is just impossible. Like I'll believe you that you went to the best of intentions, that you've researched everything, that you think 42 solutions is like, okay. At all times, are they all perfectly configured in exactly the right way? Because otherwise they are an attack vector. That's how this works. And so, we're finding the balance of risk that makes the most sense.
Right. And when I talk to people about security, it's almost like there's information overload. It's almost like, it's almost like COVID in a way. I mean, people are just like bombarded with information, and it's almost like they've surrendered in some ways, mentally surrendered.
If we think about buyers for a moment, just the way people buy, buyers actually don't want more choice. They want more confidence in the choices they've made.
Right.
They don't necessarily want more options. What they want is more confidence that what they're doing is the best choice for them.
Yep.
And that's where I think, by the way, the value of our entire IT services space is it's around knowledge and expertise way more than products and the technology itself. So about being a consultant is on the upswing. I think that is the most valuable service that any IT services company can sell right now is good consulting.
It's almost the concept of being able to simplify and clarify what's going on, because like I said, I can't even count the number of people I talk to that at the end of the day, what they're saying is, I just don't understand what's going on. I just don't understand. It's just become too complex, and they're scared of everything.
Yeah. And they want somebody, because they want someone to help them.
Yeah.
They want someone to navigate them. They know that it won't be perfect, and they want someone who can help respond when it goes badly.
Yeah.
And by the way, what I always say, when it goes badly, not if it goes badly.
Well, that's the thing that people in that same conversation, there's a desire to be bulletproof.
Yeah.
And I openly say there's no such thing. I said we can become bullet resistant.
Well, right. I mean, and this is not. I mean, I'll sort of quip and go, "This is not an area I'm expert in." But if you go look at, like, I don't know, bulletproof vests, they don't talk about stopping all bullets. They talk about what it's doing to minimize the damage.
Yeah. Right.
Like that. Literally, the phrase we're using does not mean the thing people think it means.
Yeah. Makes me think of two guys drinking beer and, hey, shoot me.
Right. It's like, if you screw that up, you're gonna die.
One chance to have fun with that one.
Right.
Do you see any, I guess, continuing with this terrible security topic, do you see any tool or tool sets or kind of tools that are just yesterday's news, like things that people maybe think are helping them but aren't? And we don't need to talk products. Well, you can if you want, but
let me just point out that I'm not generally in the business of shaming product companies. Right. I don't actually think that helps that much. I want to talk more about shaming practices. I'm going to go a little broad and say what I think is the old way of doing things that most haven't realized is not having skin in the game. Where I think that the big shift that I think is going to happen, I made this prediction on my own prediction series. I'll give you some insights into it. I think this is going to happen this year. Is you're going to see more solutions in this space, particularly products, but I also mean solutions where they've put some financial skin in the game. I want to use this as an example, not an endorsement. I say that again, an example, not an endorsement. What SentinelOne has done with their warranty is really interesting to me. So they've got $1 million insurance policy on their product when it's configured correctly in certain circumstances. Look, there's a long list of limitations, right? But what I love about that is that there is a model that says, look, if you're using our product and it's got all the green check boxes and it is reporting that it is working correctly, we will put some financial incentive around the way that works. Right? We've got skin in the game there. And I think you're going to see more of that as the way it's going. And that implies, by the way, that people that have sold you locks that come with no guarantees are the old way of doing things. I will, again, I'm not going to bash a particular vendor, but I can think of an antivirus piece of software that has the "you are safe" in the interface with a big giant green checkbox.
Yeah.
But there's not a single bit of financial investment in that.
So if my computer, you're safe until you're not.
Right, exactly. I've got this, I have this advanced piece of software on my laptop, right? And it's the right thing to do, and I'm using it, and it tells me, reports to me, I am safe. But if I am not safe and something happens, they immediately go, well, we're not responsible. We've got no actual, we've got no actual financial incentive. We will not protect you in any way. And if you think about this you can see it physically in things like UPSs and surge protectors, right? If one of those things blows, you have like a financial coverage on your equipment that blew with it. Because they know if it does certain things that they've protected it and tested it, and they know that generally they're going to be covered in most scenarios. And the ones where it happens, they're going to put some money involved. I think that's the trend. I think things are going to move that way. I think you're going to see some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, very interesting.
Imagine if you could buy a product, right, or a service where it runs on your system and it's constantly scanning. And if green is checked and it's reporting home, you have insurance coverage. But then if something happens that you changed and it goes red and it'll say you are no longer financially insured. Now that's interesting to me.
Right. Well, that's definitely a motivation to make the squirrels do this, and do this. You see, I like the concept you're talking about where you see the red X. You see the red X, and all of a sudden people start running around and bumping into each other.
Right.
Whether, it's an interesting way to think about it.
Because again, most people generally want to do the right stuff. There's interesting, really, there's some research I'll leverage just to make the point on this, where they did a bunch of research on like phishing attacks and the way phishing works and such like that. And they actually found that generally what users want is they do want to be alerted that something is suspicious. But did you know it actually makes no difference whether or not it just says this is suspicious versus a long description of why it's suspicious. The behavior doesn't change.
Right.
They just want to know if something's suspicious or not. And then they will course correct generally based on having just that information. But if you give them more information, it doesn't help.
Yeah. No, interesting. Before we, I have more stuff for you, but I guess I wanted to ask the folks who are on the call if they have any questions they'd like to ask and allow some participation. So
yeah, please. And I always say, I will answer anything.
Yeah. And Dave he'll answer it. He goes forward with no fear whatsoever. So does anybody have any question or anything they wanted to ask Dave about? Hearing no questions and seeing no unmutes. I guess I wanted to ask you, if getting away from the hated security topic, I wanted to ask you if there is an emerging tech or a technology or a tool or set of tools that has you super excited about things. Is there something out there you see that's like, this is the next thing, the shiznit? You got to check this shiznit out.
Yeah. So and I do totally have one. So I'll tell you, my mantra is I like complex problems because I believe there's money in them. like if things were simple,
right,
it would be mass produced and sold, and I wouldn't make very good money. Right. I like hard problems. I am 100% admit I'm completely fascinated by the shift in work, the new remote working, work from home, the transformation that's going on in business right now. I am absolutely 100% fascinated by it. I think it is a huge thing. And one of the reasons why I love it so much is there is not one answer. Everyone is searching for the answer, right? Well, what does work look like now? What does hybrid work mean? And everyone wants one answer. There's going to be 1,000 different answers, and they will all be right to different degrees. I love this space. I love talking about it. I love debating it. I love exploring ideas because we're all figuring it out. I'll give you an example. I was just looking at some stuff around 4-day work weeks, and some Iceland has looked at this. Japan has looked at it as a country level. The company Bolt just did a 3-month trial, and they've implemented it full time at their business. And they're just my most recent example, where they're going to a 4-day work week because they found like an 85% increase in productivity. They're finding increases in productivity by working less. It's amazing. It's a fantastic idea to explore. I love these. And I'll tell you that I'm just working on it. It'll probably come out on either tomorrow or Friday's show. I'm looking at some new research. Some researchers studied GitHub to look at the shift in the way people have worked since the beginning of the pandemic around time and workload. And they're trying to measure that against productivity based on code commits, like actual data from the last 18 months of the shift. And what they're finding is that more than anything, it is a shift and a disruption of when people work, not how much and when they work.
Like time of day they work.
Yeah, time of day kind of shifts.
The new management of work-life balance is kind of an interesting thing.
It's right. And this is all such a cool, and the reason I love this space and I get excited about it is it allows small agile companies to be really clever and build things that work for them. Not necessarily, no, they didn't say work for everybody, work for them.
Well, and it allows you as an organization like that to really have an opportunity to deepen your talent pool.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
The concept of geography goes away. Geography isn't a limiter anymore.
Right. And this will be interesting because at a theoretical level, that's an easy statement to make. But when we dig into it, will we see true dispersion to work from anywhere? Or will we see the reshuffling of like urban centers because humans, in the broad sense, like to be with other humans, right? For social community, for non-work related reasons. So the idea will not be that everyone disperses to anywhere, but it may reshape where people work and how they work and what areas look like, and thus what the needs of those regions are. Right. And the why I love this is because, by the way, everything I've just been describing is enabled by technology, but effective with people. So you're going to have to be good at both skill sets. You're going to have to be good at the technology piece, and you're going to have to be good at the people piece. Oh, and by the way, hard problems, lots of money.
Right.
like that's why I love this space, because there's no answer, and you can start experimenting and doing, and as we dig into the research and we learn trends and you try things, you'll discover the stuff that works. Yeah, that's cool
And
space.
it's even the capabilities to extend the office, like the office function. So if you think about a modern office environment or work environment that everybody kind of shuffles into and stuff, and what's there? UPS power is there. There's security things there. There's paper and print things there. And how do you manage those in the new space? One of the things that I've had a good amount of interest in is things like consumer or small commercial grade UPSs.
Mm-hmm.
Because now and because now people are relying on their internet connection, and if they have their internet connection UPS, then they have a power outage, they can still work functionally, because 80% of power outages are like a minute or 2 minutes,
Right,
and they can
exactly.
keep those things up, and functional.
Right. And it even extends into all the things around it. Like, how will buying behaviors change based on people spending more time in their homes? Like,
Right.
I mean, I'll give my own personal example because it's fun to, like, I'm literally redesigning probably the door to my office, right? Because both my cat and my wife keep interrupting me on calls, right? And
Right.
and so, but I'm spending time like redesigning my physical space, and by the way, that's spending money, and there's people around that, and what businesses are required long term to support that, what technology changes, like we're on now. How many of us now have all invested in interesting lighting solutions for our homes based on work from anywhere? Like, there's such interesting stuff going on here, both transactionally, but also that will shift long term.
And I think you're right. The other piece of that is the people component, where that gentleman that I was asking about before we got on the call, he and I were talking about what it means to work in your basement for 2 weeks straight. You know what I mean? And a lot of the spaces that are being driven in areas like just coffee shops have to do with people being able to come in, have an area, and not necessarily sit with other people talking to them, but to just have other people around them, like to get out of your basement, right? To get out of this space.
And the next level is interesting, is also how do you manage people like that? How do you manage people, particularly if, for those that have been previous kind of micromanagers that like need to see it, if you're moving towards a world of task-based versus time-based or results-based, like that is a very different management style.
Right.
You've got to learn that, and it can be very technology enabled, right? Like the way work flows is very technology enabled, which is why, again, I love it for the IT services space. But the hard bit is the people side of it. Making people good managers, making people learn the skills of remote management. Right. Remember, 80% of the time, people quit their job because of a bad manager. Not because of pay, not because of commute, not because of they quit because they had a bad manager.
Right.
So I love it. So you asked, like, I love this space because of all of this.
Yeah, very interesting space. Paul, did you have something you were going to add? Or?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in there. I mean, we took over management of a co-working facility, and they're maxed out already. I mean, they had 50% capacity, and within 3 months they are full. So, I mean, this co-working facility idea of, hey, I want to work where I want to work, and then have a place to meet, so people have dissolved their offices and saying, hey, we're going to go meet at this co-working facility. I bring everybody together. It doesn't, because
and from a business, go ahead.
It's hard to get into a coffee shop. So you should be, planning your meetups with your employees and your, group into an actual facility that is designed for it.
From a commercial real estate perspective, all of a sudden I don't need to maintain this building and the elevators and the toilets and the carpets and all that stuff. We can go meet at a co-working place, and we can have, maybe in that building they have a coffee shop, but we can go get a coffee, and we're not bound by these cube walls anymore. It's kind of this free. Yeah, it's kind of like if you think about how dairy farms have changed. You used to have bring a cow in, they go to a stanchion, you milk them, they go out, all that, to now where they just kind of walk in when they need to get it done, and they kind of do it, and they kind of walk out again, and they show up, and it's kind of that. a whole different way of thinking about it. That's a good point there with those things.
Yeah, I love that space. I think savvy providers are going to be thinking about that, and the smartest ones are the ones that are thinking beyond just the tech. Right? This is not just a matter of, do they have the right laptops? Do they have the right webcams? Are they running the right software? It's about how do I get involved in making people effective with this?
Right. Good. Very good. Are there any other questions? I see we're bumping up against what our time would be. Are there any other questions? Anything else for Dave? Any thoughts? Dave, do you have anything that you'd like to wrap up with? I guess what I would say is, if nothing else, maybe just tell us a little bit again about your shows and how people can find the podcast and that, because like I said, I've been checking them out and have found how should I say it? There's value in it, but also it's interesting. I mean, like like you watch people falling off stuff, and that's funny. America's Funniest Home Video,
yep.
Tribute to Bob Saget or whatever. But but it's different. It's entertaining, but it's also informative and interesting. So I think that's kind of the power in it. Like you said, how do you help people and introduce them to new things? So maybe give a plug for that stuff so folks can find that.
I really appreciate the chance to, and I'm always honored and humbled by people that enjoy my stuff. I try and not just be boring. I try to actually be entertaining too.
Well, I like the disruptive nature of it. That it's interesting to hear a different way to think about it.
I love exploring ideas. And I talk about it all the time, is protect people, but then and you always need to be respectful, but then explore ideas. And that's the fun bit. So let's explore the ideas and figure out, and may the best ideas win in the market. So my show, if you're interested in the daily podcast, it's on all the podcatchers, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Just look up the business of tech. There's a cool logo. You can also find us at businessof.tech is the website. There is a big blue button that makes it easy for you to subscribe to the podcast. It comes out weekly on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/MSP radio. If you're interested in the weekly commentary show, that's called Killing It. It's also on all of the podcatchers available out there. There are links to that show and all the other shows on the MSP Radio Network at mspradio.com. So that's the kind of the easiest way to find me. I am not hard to find. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. I'm in all of the various MSP IT services Facebook groups. I'm in the Slack groups. I'm in the Discord. I'm on all of them. If you ever need me, I am always here to help. People can ping me. I answer questions. I'm just here to help out.
Super interesting. All right. One of the things that we do on the PowerLunch is we spin what I have been heretofore forced to call the wheel of happiness and good feelings. But those people who usually make me do that are not with us today. So it will be a spinning of the wheel of death today.
Cool.
The wheel of death will be spun. And let me say the odds are pretty good because we got Raj and Denny. So I'm going to share my screen, and it's we go for a $10 certificate from Subway. So are you guys able to see my screen? You see the wheel of death there? So we'll give it a spin.
Yes, we do. Yes.
And I'm assuming you do love the monochromatic aspect of it with the very frightening logo in the center.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. So here we go. Round and round the wheel goes. Where she stops, nobody knows who's going to be the sandwich winner today. And it's Denny. Denny wins today.
Congrats.
Raj has been on a little bit of a dry spell lately, Raj. We're gonna
I have. It's okay.
We need to get you a rabbit's foot or a clover leaf or something to keep in your pocket for the show. So, Denny, you'll get a gift card or a gift certificate electronically for Subway, and you can have your PowerLunch that way.
Okay.
Dave, I want to say thank you very much. Great session. Really enjoyed talking to you, and maybe at some point we can get you on again if we can snag you for long enough. But
anytime, I open offer. If anybody ever needs me to help out, that's what I'm here for.
Yep.
It's always happy to come on and voice opinions. I don't always promise to be right. I do just promise to come with data and a line of reasoning of why I think the thing I do. So anytime you need me, I'm here. That's
awesome. Very good. All right. Well, thank you to everybody, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Take care. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Yep. Bye-bye.